Coogs house. It was a roller coaster of a Monday for the Houston Cougar basketball program, but the biggest reflecting might have been from some of the news over the weekend.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Make your first listen each and every day when doing the conversation, but you don't know what to say. Tell us in the comments down below if you're a chicken nuggets or chicken strips person. I'm not gonna throw my own opinion out there. See what you got. Nuggets, strips. If you come on out of left field with something other, let me know. Today's show is brought to you by Nissan, but it's over at Nissan helping you get through March Madness. Got more fun on them later in the Nissan Armada. But today's show is all about the roller coaster of emotions that were Monday. You're at your water cooler at work. You're listening to sports talk radio on your way home. You listen to us on the way to work, I'm sure, right? But you're sitting there going through, and all this stuff kept coming out about Houston over Monday and the weekend. And so I want to talk some about the Big 12 Awards, which headlined a lot of things across the region, city, etc. In the third segment, I want to spend some time about Coach Quantus White and getting excited for Quantus in the second segment. But first, I think a lot of reflection on Monday was like a lot of people saying, wait a second, Conner Weigman did what? Yeah, that's the case. And so it came over the weekend in kind of a news dumpy story that people started talking about throughout the day Monday. Like, wait a second, Conner Weigman played all season with Toradol shots, and it really well article written by CBS. But Conner Weigman, transfer quarterback to University of Houston, was a five-star top four player in the country coming out of high school. Coming to A&M, went to Bridgeland High School in the Houston area, went to A&M initially, and his first year as a real starter there is playing well, over 70% passing, 3 yards per game, fourth highest Pro Football Focus score in America, killing it, right? Just killing it. And ultimately, his foot shatters. Needs to get screws into, I think it's the talus, it's the one like in the middle of the foot, shatters, screws in it to hold it together. Really, really bad. And this article did a really good job, I thought, from CBS of outlining like the mental toll that first injured season took off of, or that took on, I should say, on Conner. And he like talks at length about like having missed time hurt, and how like painful it was mentally to sit there and like watch your guys practice, watch your guys play, not be able to get out there on the field and all of that. And the link that he and the author are connecting here at CBS again are both this idea that then when he gets hurt in the first game in his throwing shoulder in the in last year's season, 2024, he shoulder pops out, messes up his AC joint, whatever, and sounds like there was a lot of people on the staff that wanted him to actually miss the season, to call it good, get surgery, put it back together, etc. Right? And I don't think it needed surgery medically or something. Anyway, he ended up taking Toradol shots administered medically. I don't mean like he did himself or anything, right? But Toradol shots to numb the pain and allow him to play. And ultimately, look, he says himself, didn't play his best ball, right? We talked when he first transferred to Houston with Martin back during transfer portal season. Martin was on a lot. He and I were watching video like, this guy's arm, needs some improvement. Not quite as strong as we thought it was going to be coming out of high school. Well, that's because he's playing with these Toradol shots. The injury, I think, was worse than anyone let on, right? I think it's the biggest thing to come out of this article. He takes the shots, plays throughout it, ultimately has to just eventually just take some time off because it's getting worse. And Toradol shots, you can't just do those every day forever, right? Takes some time off, loses his starting job in that moment. He steps away for a second. And admittedly, like Marcel Reed played fine or whatever at A&M, but he loses his job there and then comes back in after the fact and is not able to get his job back. So he's looking for a home. And then it sounds like there was pretty brief look at Syracuse coming out of A&M. Coaches travel. He knew some coaches up there from a time at Aggieland. But his dad, Chad Weigman, had played for Willie Fritz at Sam Houston back in the early 90s. Sean Bell, quarterback coach at Houston, had coached him up at Baylor. Baylor, I believe, was in his top 5 when he was picking a school out of high school. And all that is to say that the chips all fell where Weigman landed at Houston. We heard this, so we went live that night. We're really excited. And for what it's worth, I don't think I'm giving too much away here, people inside feel like they've got the 5-star quarterback with 2 years of eligibility left, right? Like they feel like they're getting that top 4 player in the country coming out of high school kind of guy. Something that's been great, all kinds of on the field, off the field, locker room kind of stuff, et cetera, as they're kind of getting ready for spring. I guess like really, really ready for spring right now. Anyway, I think they're really excited about what they got here, right? They feel like they've got a healthy, he took some time off after the season to recover. And it sounded like, as far as the home atmosphere, feeling at home, he took like one unofficial visit and very quickly was like on there. He's like, no, this is where I'm going to be. And that's, I think, speaks to Fritz, the recruiting staff, the guys on the team making him feel at home, right, and all that. And we know you've heard the story at this point, right? Delondo is the guys that comes after. I think what I took out of the story was, one, my reference to this was I was thinking this guy got Baker Mayfielded. And if you don't know who Baker Mayfield or don't know that story, basically Baker gets to Cleveland. They're treating him like a savior of the franchise. He hurts his throwing shoulder and plays through it in a contract year. Ultimately plays through it thinking that the toughness, the grittiness, anything for the city kind of thing is going to help him in the long term. And then they kind of get upset and scrap him after he plays hurt. They pull in Deshaun Watson, terrible decision for Cleveland for a lot of reasons. Baker goes to Florida to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, actually plays better than Watson has played for Cleveland while he's been in Tampa. Been really, really good there for them. And I say all that to say that just like that same never die Baker Mayfield attitude, Weigman kind of had that same streak, it sounds like, in reading this, right? That he felt like he was hurting the team, his guys, his role as a leader, etc., if he were to miss time hurt, because he'd already done that once. He just could not do that again. And there is something you'd argue brazen and dumb about that, right? If staff's telling you take some time off, heal your body up, etc. In a sport that is gladiatorial in how we think about big, strong, fast, tough, these guys are throwing their bodies around recklessly every single play. Quarterback takes the snap, and there are at any point between 3 and 8 guys that are 250 to 350 pounds running at him full speed. There's a lot of decisions here that we expect a level of bravery and machismo out of these guys. And I'm not saying that is the only quality of a quarterback that you got to have. I do think that it shows a good quality of quarterback to have that in Conner. I also think that, and part of my reflection, I think, on Monday throughout the day was okay, we were critical of a guy that had 4 games, season ender, quarter and a half, whatever it was, and then altered his throwing the rest of the season. He talked in the article about how his motion got changed. Did y'all get that thumbs up on there? That's weird. His motion got changed. His, mechanics had to get altered a little bit, and he shifted those back since because he was dealing with the shoulder injury. And that also, I think, explains the difference in the on the field product we saw out of Conner. And so I think that was talked about a lot on Monday, and the more you reflect on it, the more I'm running with it. So I'll make sure you're in the latest about what's going on with these 2 Cougars, because football season will be here before you know it. Conner is going to be the face of the fall for sure. That's not, you got Zion Chris behind him, Austin Carlisle behind. Those 2 guys are both really great guys and really, really great athletes. Keyshawn Henderson's class 126. He will be after that. And man, oh man, will it be time when he gets on campus. All that is in the future, but this is an interesting insight into Conner's past and to kind of where the guy the program is getting, I thought. Now, all that is to say, Conner Weigman's a big get for the Houston Cougars, but a big loss for the Houston Cougars is going to be Quantus White. I want to talk about that in a second and kind of shift gears back to basketball. This March, after all. But before we get too far, I do want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by Nissan. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. All new 2025 Nissan Armada. And this every week, our Locked On College Basketball experts, we all vote on one team that stands apart from top seeds to unexpected upsets. These guys showcase strength, sheer power to push their team forward. I promise I only get one vote in this, and I think it's a little bit more obvious this week because the week's Armada and clear-cut team of the week are the Duke Blue Devils. Look, I didn't vote for Duke Blue Devils. John Scherr's team led National Player of the Year candidate Cooper Flagg, led by National Player of the Year candidate Cooper Flagg, just ripped off the 1901 ACC record. Were plus 434 points in ACC games, largest point differential by a power conference team in league play since Kentucky over 70 years ago in 1953-54. When it comes to Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that is exactly what the Duke Blue Devils have done here with the ACC. So it's clear that Team of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can. The all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Park Ranger Locked On Coogs here, and I know that everyone was a little shocked when they heard the news on Monday, but also not like unpleasantly shocked. We kind of knew something like this would eventually happen, but the Houston Cougar men's basketball roster is going to be shifting this off season. Quannas White, spending 8 years here as an assistant after having coached a few other programs beforehand, played for Kelvin back at Oklahoma, was on that Final Four team in 2002. Quantus White has accepted a head coaching job at the University of Louisiana, formerly Louisiana Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns. And frankly, the Louisiana native makes a ton of sense. He's going to do fantastic there. A great spot for him to get his feet wet as a head coach. I would not be surprised if he moves up quickly into like bigger and bigger things, bigger programs, etc. I also know, though, that loyalty and regionality and staying close to home is important to him. And so I don't know how far away from Louisiana he's going to want to be. Quantus gets the head coaching job there. I don't know contracts and that kind of stuff. I think the biggest thing for Houston Cougar fans to understand about this was, one, Quantus has turned down other head coaching jobs in the past. He got promoted to his official title was the associate to the head coach or associate head coach at Houston, meaning he is like 1B behind Kelvin there right now. He also, for its worth, has publicly stated over and over and over again he's going to finish the season and finish the job here at Houston before he even goes to Louisiana, right? And I think a lot of people, I got tweets about it, I got comments about it. I'm sure, people are, every single person involved are wondering, like, does this mean there will be a distraction for the Houston Cougars? And I can sufficiently say no. And I think I know to say no for a lot of fronts. One, Quantus understands the thing at hand for him as a coach. As a coach moving to the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, there won't be a long time potential between the next time he is out with a team like this and right now, right? Kelvin, Kellen, Hollis, I'm not saying that they think it's going to happen every year. They obviously understand the moment and the kind of team they got on their hands, but they've also built this program to where, like, hey, this will probably be Houston's third consecutive year as a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Hey, back-to-back Big 12 champs by multiple games, et cetera, right? Quantus is moving to a program that is not quite that, to say the least, right? They fired the coach in December. That Louisiana's got to rebuild, and he's going to go do it very well, but they got time. He understands that he needs to do this now because who knows when it ever happens again. Second, the other thing for Quantus that he understands as well as anyone is part of his resume in recruiting kids in the transfer portal and recruiting kids in 2025 and 2026 to Louisiana will be what they do this March. He understands that winning this March is as important for that job as anything else he could be doing, right? He wants to go get recruits. He can get recruits all over the state of Louisiana, but if he shows up with a Final Four ring, championship hat, I say, oh yeah, sorry, I had to go to a parade. I'm sorry I'm late, right? That goes a lot farther than anything else he's going to sell to that kid looking at Louisiana, right? And I say that to say that he ain't dumb, man. He understands why that's so significant. He understands why that's going to be a big deal for the Raging Cajuns. And I have zero concern with Quantus looking ahead, getting ready to move, etc. Quantus is here, dialed in with the Coogs, and he has every reason to be for now. And frankly, even if he were thinking about that next job, it would still benefit him more to be dialed into the here and now and worry about that later, because this here and now will make that later easier. And he gets it as much as anyone. A lot of people worried about the replacement for Quantus. A big part about what Quantus did when he showed up to Houston was bring the perspective of a high-level player, he and Hollis Price both, that played for Kelvin at the peak of the Sampson system in Oklahoma. And I looked at high and low for some guys I think could do this. Now, Ebby Erie, I think, kind of fits that mold. He was the third guard on that Oklahoma team that went to the Final Four. Played internationally for a long time. Like, I think just finished playing internationally in 2018 after finishing Oklahoma in 2002. He's from Tulsa, but played for the Nigerian national team. I can't find if he's still involved with basketball, but could be an interesting guy to call up as a coach. Jason Dietrich was an impactful guard on the same team. He was young on that team, but he just recently stopped playing in Europe. Still very close to the game. If he's looking to get into coaching, could see him joining the staff as well. There are two names, though, that really, really intrigue me for guys to replace Quantus White in that role, and a very similar way to play that role, as far as having played for Kelvin, done some coaching, or stayed involved with basketball. And the first is a guy named Eddie Hill. Eddie Hill is the associate head coach at UC Riverside, so it's the same role at Riverside that Quantus just occupied at Houston. Eddie played for Kelvin at Washington State way back in the day and was part of the great rebuild of that program then. He was a senior the year they got to the NCAA tournament, which was kind of like the first time they got in a tournament in a long time there at Wazoo. And, I understand that thing like Washington State, it's a long way away. UC Riverside's a long way away. Before taking, I guess it was the South Dakota job the year before the Riverside job, but before taking the one-year job at South Dakota, he was a high up in DFW's Pro Skills EYBL program, the director of their 17U team for 3 or 4 years. He dabbled some in coaching in the business world prior to that. He was on some college staffs before that in Portland and stuff like that. But that was kind of the meat of his coaching credential before getting the job at San Diego State, and has been a high riser, very quick riser as well. Again, the guy's not necessarily young, but once he got in the college game, then in 2020, he's kind of shot up ranks very quickly at these smaller institutions. And he's still you go to social media, Eddie Hill, he'll post stuff about Kelvin all the time, still very big, remembers his roots in that way. Having done stuff in Texas, his kids are both also in Texas. He's got one that is playing basketball at St. Edwards in Austin. One's a journalism student at North Texas and DFW in the Metroplex. Eddie himself was a 41% three-point shooter back in 94. That's kind of impressive to go back to how they played back then. His last year with the year went to the Final Four. He was their leading point man in a bunch of important games. He's an impactful player on those teams, so he can do the same kind of relationship kind of stuff that Quantus did, as far as hey, I understand what it's like to be a great player for Kelvin. Let me talk your ear off. Let's talk about this a little bit, right? He can kind of direct guards in that way. For what it's worth, Silverwave Media is a coaching outlet that looks like coaching across the country. It's kind of a relatively new group. They named him to their list of rising stars in college basketball last year. Really, really impressive resume for a young guy. And again, he knows Kelvin played for Kelvin a long time ago. Kelvin doesn't forget names and faces. I'd imagine that's one that gets a phone call. Kelvin likes to keep things in-house. He's talked before about having the mentality of, if he's not going to hire guys that played for him, why should anyone else? That's why he's got a staff built of guys that played for him, his son, Hollis, Quantus before now, right, et cetera. My second name I'm intrigued by, hear me out here, is actually a guy that is not done playing yet, but I think it's going to be done really soon. And that's Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon played for the Houston Rockets for a minute, really enjoyed his time in Houston with them. If you ever hear him talk about it, things went south and that whole coaching shift happened or whatever. But before that, he enjoyed his time in Houston. He played at Indiana. He was a one and done at Indiana. And he was at least the best recruit that Sampson had at Indiana ever. He might have been the best ranked recruit, depending on what ranking you're looking at, that Sampson ever had, period. Was Mr. Basketball in the state of Indiana, etc. But he really connects with Houston after having lived here. And in doing a quick amount of digging, right, did not take long to figure out there are all kinds of articles out about Eric Gordon having a strong relationship with Kelvin and having, frankly, said on the record at different points, he kind of feels like Indiana did Kelvin wrong, right? If you don't know, Kelvin got asked to leave Indiana in February of his final year there. Some recruiting deal where he was using phones or something, make a bunch of phone calls, stuff that is not illegal now, right? And Eric Gordon has said on the record, hey, I think that was a really strict, stern punishment for something that, the phone deal wasn't that big a deal, right? And frankly, he kind of feels like he sided with Kelvin in that breakup. I don't think it's any accident that Eric Gordon went one and done. Now, he would have been a top whatever pick and all that, but he just certainly wasn't going to come back for year two and play for somebody else, right? That team with Eric and Kelvin was 17-1 before Kelvin was asked to go, very out of nowhere. But Eric, being so well connected with Kelvin, I think could also do the deal where, hey, understands the high-end player perspective. They work some of the same kind of pro stuff. And Eric's first couple of years in Houston were kind of towards the end of what Kelvin was doing at the Rockets. They both know each other, having lived in Houston as well. That overlap of that was going on. And frankly, for what it's worth, if Eric wanted to get into coaching after retiring, he's 36 going on 37. It would be he might not have the same high up of a role as Quantus did, but I do think there's something to be said about the fact that he could come in and take that some position on staff and kind of have that same player relationship as a guy that played with Kelvin. Others would maybe not be able to have. The other thing I would say about Eric, and this will be where I wrap up the segment, so we're going a little long, is that he's a recent enough NBA name that I think he'll carry some level of respect with recruits and stuff like that. I think it's worth mentioning that's going to be really, really important as well. Now, I want to talk about the other big news today and Monday with the Big 12 awards coming out. And I think Houston only got hosed on one of them. Let's talk about it in 1 second. But first, today's show is also brought to you by Roy. So Locked On Coogs fans, if you've ever wished you could directly support your favorite Houston athletes and be part of their journey, now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear path or easiest way to support them. Now with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing the Houston Cougars. The Roy, you just play what you want to support and decide how much you want to contribute. Get exclusive content straight from the athletes right back to you. And the best part is if your player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly. It helps shape the future of Houston sports, football, basketball, and men's basketball and women's basketball. Download the Roy app from the App Store and start supporting the Houston Cougars the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join in now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite Cougs. Parker Ranger, Locked On Coogs. You're talking about Houston's big News Day Monday and the kind of finale of the News Day, if you will, where the Big 12 Men's Basketball Awards came out. Houston was pretty well represented. 5 different starters got something. If you count that Emmanuel Sharp was mentioned in the honorable mention category. Kelvin Sampson also got named Coach of the Year in the conference. Defensive Player of the Year was JoJo Tugler. Scholar Athlete of the Year was LJ Cryer. I guess LJ does have pretty strong grades. That made sense. I just didn't know. I didn't. Anyway, LJ Cryer, Scholar Athlete of the Year. There we go. I knew he was smart and knew he had grades. I just didn't know that Houston was going to have someone in the rank, but that's usually someone that's like a 6th man or an 8th man. And LJ is clearly a lot more than that because he's also first team All Big 12. Jawan Roberts, first team All Big 12 and defensive team. Pretty strong showing, right? Houston had 4 guys in the first 1 through 3 teams of all Big 12. No one else had 4. Tech had 3. Iowa State had 3 on the first through third teams. Houston and Tech both had 2 on the first team and both had a single person on the second team. Houston had a guy on the third team. Iowa State had 2 guys on that third team, 1 on the first team. Tech had no honorable mentions, neither did Iowa State. Houston had Emmanuel Sharp in the honorable mention category. Houston was the only school of any school in the conference with 2 players on the all defensive team, both Roberts and Tugler. And look, I understand why. A year ago, LJ Cryer was not eligible for Newcomer of the Year. He went from Baylor to Houston, Big 12 to Big 12. That means this year, Miles Uzan was not eligible for Newcomer of the Year. He went from Oklahoma to Houston. Oklahoma was in the Big 12 when he was there, right? So he's not new to the conference. It is odd to me, though, that Norchad Omier was on the all-newcomers team. JT Toppin, I think, was Newcomer of the Year, but Norchad Omier was on the all-newcomers team, having come from Miami to Baylor, when that's really kind of the same movement to me as Oklahoma to Houston. It's just what patch they wore on the jersey. But I could digress. I think I got 2 gripes. 2 gripes, the all Big 12 teams. I think Emmanuel Sharp deserved to at least be third team. I understand he took off some time injured. I really, really impressed by him, especially for the first 2/3 of the year. Then I thought he guarded BJ Edgecombe in crucial moments as well as anyone could on as recently as Saturday. I think he's a really important part of what Houston does. Houston won the conference by multiple games for a second consecutive year. I don't think it's a stretch to say that's because they have 5 guys that are in the first 20 guys in the conference. I think Emmanuel got honorable mention, which means people did vote for him, and not just like a single person. Coaches cannot vote for their own players, so that means other people gave him the acknowledgement. And frankly, if I'm being really honest, I bet Emmanuel and the guys don't care a whole lot about any of this. They're more worried about winning in March. However, I am not in that locker room. I am not in the coaching office. I'm here with my computer, my microphone, and you, and I do care about it. I do think it's not right that Emmanuel got an honorable mention of a third team. I do think he was at least that good and at least that impactful in helping Houston win important games. I mean, we all think of the Malik Wilson shot to end the Kansas first overtime and Fog Allen, but right before that, Emmanuel hits it from 32 feet to make it a 3-point game, right? He's important in all these different ways, on top of getting crazy difficult defensive assignments for Houston and being able to excel in those roles. And I really more think I want it for him, right? I think that he worked hard enough to earn that this year. He missed a couple games hurt, and I hope that didn't belabor the things, right? Other thing I will say is that if Milos Uzan was not eligible for Newcomer of the Year, right, because he went from Big 12 school to Big 12 school, I really think he should have been eligible for been considered for most improved player of the year. Because if anything, I think we've seen the improvement in him as a Houston Cougar this year, let alone how much more is put on his shoulders as Kelvin Sampson's Houston point guard compared to any and everything he was doing at Oklahoma, right? And so I guess I can understand the argument that he is not a newcomer to the conference, if that's what you're going to twist my arm and say. I just feel like he was important enough, again, in multiple important Houston. I mean, Houston doesn't beat Tech in Lubbock without him, right? There's a handful of games Houston does not win without him. He gets the tip that gets the Malik shot if we keep going down this list, right? I just feel like he had pretty strong claim to that, and I would wonder what, they don't show the breakdown of the voting, and I wonder how close he was to getting it. Because, again, Sampson himself can't vote for him. It has to be other people voting for him. You can't vote for him. Guys, I feel like Milos was cut a little short. They got second team, all conference, right? So kudos to that. JoJo got third, and then obviously as defense player of the year and first team all defense. I wonder about what else we could have tagged with Milos and Emmanuel to make sure we accurately represented the impact they had on the Big 12 conference as a whole this year. Now, speaking of Big 12 conference, it is conference tournament week, and as against it as I am, the Houston Cougars will be playing to win this thing. They play to win everything that they play. We can keep breaking that down throughout the week ad nauseum. But the fun kind of starts Tuesday. And by that I mean the opening round. You'll get TCU and Colorado in their rubber match. They just played over the weekend, and they'll play again on Tuesday. Winner will play West Virginia on Thursday. Winner of that triumvirate will play Houston on – no, I said that backwards. It's TCU and Colorado Tuesday. Winner plays West Virginia Wednesday. The winner of that triumvirate will play Houston on Thursday for a shot at the semifinals in the conference. I will say that I think Houston's got a favorable match against all those, but we'll be watching that game on Tuesday, kind of pulling some nuggets of it out for Wednesday's show. I think what's best for Houston, what the best options for Houston are at that point. We'll also be talking about whatever other news and notes happen throughout the days, weeks, etc. As Houston heads into March Madness, hoping to make it all the way to cutting those nets down in San Antonio on Monday in April. Feels like a long way away, but it's going to go really, really quickly. And we're doing it each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. So subscribe to the bell so you know we're live. Locked On Coogs, primary Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.